on.
What's that? It's an infinite number of times.
Let's see if I can get online tour.
It went to the blue.
I got you, babe.
That's it. All right, go whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Recording's on.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Got a full house today. So we'll go ahead and get started with attendance. Bill Sage, back chair.
Suzanne Dirksen, back member.
Stephen Ward, City Council.
Tyson Harburg, staff.
Jenny Nolan, Budget Administrator. Rita Russell, City Council.
Jackie Lowe, Director of Finance.
Peter Van Rye, Director of South Platte Renew and Utilities.
Sarah Stone, Deputy Director of Business Solutions for Utilities.
Christine Underhill, Director of Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf.
Tim Host, I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works for Engineering.
Peter Echo, Budget Advisory Committee. And we'll get started online. McHugh, you want to start us off?
Yep, Min-Kyu John, Budget Advisory Committee member.
Sean Lewis, City Manager.
Tim Dallas, Assistant City Manager.
Okay. Was there anyone else on the 720 or was like somebody dialing in on video?
I think that was Min-Kyu.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Okay, well, we'll start off with approval of minutes from our last meeting on August 23rd. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I will move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor of approving last month's meeting notes?
Aye.
All right, moving forward. And we have James Horan, who just joined us as well from attendance. So tonight, we are going to go through, we appreciate all the directors coming in and staff and Jenny for getting everyone organized. So we're going to go through the capital budgets, an overview of that to continue to help the back become educated and, help make recommendations as part of our yearly report, which we did for the first time this past year. So thank you all for coming. We look forward to hearing that. And then Jackie and Jenny will move us into financial review. So I think we can move forward with getting started.
Just so everyone knows, Rita Russell has celebrated her wedding anniversary on Monday night, but officially we'll celebrate tomorrow night with her husband.
Congrats.
Alrighty, tonight we'll start off with capital projects that are currently underway and the directors who are here. It looks as though we're missing Jeromy tonight, but we have Tim Host, Deputy Director of Public Works Engineering, Christina Underhill from Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf, and Peter Van Rye, Director of Utilities and Director of South Platte Renew, along with Sarah Stone, Deputy Director of Utilities. Then after we have the presentation of the capital projects, you may stay for the rest of the meeting if you like, or you can leave, whatever is your preference. And then we'll go over briefly the reference guide for the back, the overall calendar for 2022, 2023. And then what was also requested of us is to provide alternative financing for capital projects. We're just, again, just providing education to the back membership of the different types of alternative financing available. So to start us off, let's see, I don't know why this isn't. There we go. So since Jeremy's not here, if Jeromy joins us, we'll come back to his slides. But in the meantime, if Tim, you'll start us off, and I'll try to increase this a little bit.
I can't see the names of the projects. It's big.
Is that a little bit better?
That's fine, yeah, I can go
Okay.
over this. So I just listed the major ones we have underway right now. All of these listed here actually have a grant component to them. So there's outside funding that's being provided to make these projects possible. So the 285 Broadway intersection reconstruction project, we actually opened bids on that on July 26th. And I don't know if you've all heard, the bids came in about $6 million over what we have budget for. So it's a pretty big gap there to fill on that project there. It's a combination of the construction market right now, and the steel prices are, this project and the Oxford Pedestrian Bridge both involve steel bridges, and the steel is very, seems like the market is very high right now from what contractors are telling us. Steel is a very high cost commodity right now, and that has affected both of those projects. But the goal right now at 285 Broadway, we're going to look at different grant funding options and ways we might be able to come up with some more of that money, because it is, that project involves it's replacing the bridge, but it's also widening 285, which is a CDOT road. So I hesitate to recommend the city try to come up with that $6 million gap, because it's really it's more of a CDOT roadway, and they really need we're going to push them to come to the table with some more funding if we can. We have reached out to them after the bid opening, and they, at this time anyway, they don't have any room in their budget to fund any more for that project. So we are somewhat in a holding pattern on that until we can identify some more funding to make that happen. But more than likely, we'll wait probably at least a year or something and try to rebid it and see if the bids come in less. And then in the meantime, try to find some more CDOT money and some potential grant funding that might be able to supplement what we already have. So that's kind of the plan moving forward to that, to try to make that one happen. And the Oxford Avenue Pedestrian Bridge, the bids for that one were opened back on April 7th, and that one came in about $600,000 higher than we have budget for. And once again, it's a full steel bridge, and the steel prices are just kind of crazy right now. So we do have some options on that one. There's actually a developer down at Oxford, Navajo, looking to develop, and we're looking at getting a contribution from them to help with some of that gap there. We think we can get close to $500,000 from that developer based on the field over here that they contributed to that bridge going across Hampden there. So we think based on the calculation we did there, and the developer seems receptive to that ask. So it's a PUD, so we can negotiate, terms of that rezoning and stuff. So we floated that out to them, and they seem receptive. So we're hoping we can get around $500,000 to help bridge the gap on that Oxford project to make that a little bit closer to reality there. That's a little closer than the 285 one. And then the Dartmouth Bridge widening, the project that will never stop. That one is it's still going on. That's very active. That's been a very difficult project to get through CDOT. Right now, the issue is we've been going back and forth with CDOT on all of these projects, because they involve grant funding. We have to go through CDOT's local agency process, which is involves all of CDOT's clearances and regulations. The Dartmouth project is fairly complicated with, we've got two different grants on that. We got a grant for the actual bridge replacement, and there's bridge widening, and then a grant for the roadway widening on either end of the bridge, and the traffic signals are getting replaced on both ends of that bridge. So I think CDOT's almost exhausted all of the comments they can have on the plan. So we're about ready to, hopefully they'll give us approval to advertise that within a month or two, and we can finally get that re-advertised and see where it comes in. We're predicting, we've got budget for about a $5 million construction cost on that, and the estimate right now is just over $5 million. So that's kind of estimating based on today's rates as well. We kind of tried to bump that up to make sure we weren't going to get into the same situation. So we're cautiously optimistic that project will come in within budget, and we'll have enough to actually build that and get that going. So the 285 congestion mitigation study, that is still in the more the public engagement phase. We're getting a lot of public feedback and then information to kind of inform the recommendations. There's the next step they're going to have on that one is do kind of an alternatives analysis and look at different ways to kind of the different options we have to improve the traffic flow along 285 out here. So it's probably about 60% done, about 2/3 of the way complete right now with the study. They're predicting probably about February we'll have the final report on that with the recommendations on things that can be done to reduce congestion, I guess is the plan for that. So we'll see if, hopefully there's some, we're gonna focus them on maybe some lower cost, low hanging fruit type stuff that we can do that's not quite so major. And then most of that project will be stuff like that, signal timing and different kind of turn lane things and stuff. Just because widening that is obviously not feasible. We're not gonna be able to widen 285, but we can do some more to improve the functionality of it. So we're hoping that'll come up with some options there that we can look at maybe to fund some initial things to do. But that project, it assumes that the 285 and Broadway will be done and that will be widened. Because obviously if that doesn't get widened under the 285 and Broadway there, that's going to cause a lot of congestion. That's what a lot of the congestion is now, is that restriction underneath that bridge is. So yeah, those guys were a little concerned about if we don't get that project built, it's going to change the recommendations for the congestion stuff. So we're moving forward with the assumption that the widening will happen eventually, and we'll be able to do some of the other recommendations from that report. And the Floyd and Laddie intersection modifications, that is, it's another grant funded project we got. It's a little smaller grant. I think it's around $250,000 we got on that, but that's to right at the intersection of Floyd and Laddie. We're going to reconfigure some of the islands and the corners there to make it easier for bikes and peds to navigate that intersection. If you're familiar with that one, that's kind of where we have the offset between the north and south. The Laddie doesn't quite line up at Floyd. There's kind of a weird offset there, so we're trying to direct people a little better through that intersection, especially bikes and peds, so it's a little clearer path for them to get through there and make sure that the cars can see them and everybody knows where they're supposed to go. So, in East Dartmouth traffic calming, that's the one where we're looking at the, we had the crash history there at the intersections of Logan, Clarkson, and Downing, that there's a lot of broadside crashes and stuff, and we're looking at potentially turning those traffic signals at those intersections into mini roundabouts to try to make that a little safer for cars and for bikes and peds. So where that one's at right now, the consultant is looking at the alternative between doing signal improvements or modifications versus a roundabout and how that looks, and we've asked them to come back with a recommendation on what is going to reduce the crashes there and what is the best option there. So we're hoping to have that result here fairly soon, and then we're going to schedule a council study session to go over those results to make sure council's aware of that and kind of the recommendations, and if we do want to move forward with the roundabouts or not. But the consultants, they've got the study just about done to kind of give us that, here's what, based on the analysis, what they think is the best option for those intersections. And the West Dartmouth multimodal safety, that involves 2 traffic signals going to be replaced at Zunai and at Tejon. It also involves striking a bike lane on both east and westbound there that'll tie into the bike lane there or the bike path along the Platte River there, just right where the Dartmouth Bridge widening is happening. So that will connect the new bike lane that was put in on Zunai Street, and then there'll be a nice east-west route for people to get over to the Platte River Trail there and to be able to go north-south, or they can get all the way into Englewood across Santa Fe there. So that one is that one just kicked off. That one's it's in the early stages right now. The consultant, I think it's just the kickoff meeting was a couple weeks ago, so they're in the preliminary stages of starting the design and figuring out what that's going to look like. So it's probably, I don't know what I put the end date on. I think both the Dartmouths are the end of next year is when we're planning that the construction would be completed by the end of next year, the way things look right now. So, and then the Dartmouth Bridge, we're looking at hopefully Dartmouth Bridge next spring there, and those other completion dates were fairly optimistic. So see how that all comes together. But yeah, then the stormwater, I just listed those 3 there, the main projects we're focused on right now. We've got the, obviously the big one is the South Englewood flood reduction project. That's the big detention pond we're going to put down there at Radcliffe and Navajo, just south of where the Oxford Ped Bridge is there. But that's where that project's at right now. We're a little bit in a holding pattern. We've actually got some pretty good feedback from FEMA that we've got a decent chance of getting a grant for that project, up to $20 million worth of a grant. So we're really excited about that. May come through, but it does require us to wait a little bit to get a response from FEMA. So we do have the loan that's already been approved. We're going to go ahead and close on that loan and get that lined up so we know we have funding no matter what for that project. But we don't want to spend the loan money until we know if we got a grant, because there's no sense in paying it back if you don't have to. So I was pretty excited to hear that. I didn't think we'd have a chance on that FEMA grant, but it sounds like we're one of the few shovel-ready projects with that project. They were excited that we have the plans are pretty well done on that project. It's ready to start. You know, as soon as we've got the property acquired, they like to see stuff like that where it's feasible, you know, and you're actually, you have a plan and it's, you know, feasible and well thought out and ready to go. So that was, I think that was a good feather in our cap there to show that we have this ready, it's designed, it's going to happen, we're going to make it happen. So there's, but the downside is probably another 3 to 4 months before we'll go back from FEMA. So it's probably looking like early next year before we can bid that one out, depending on the funding source and what FEMA requires, if they require any other information from us to give us the grant funding. But it's pretty promising that, yeah, we're finishing up the application right now. The state came back and gave us comments on our application to make it more competitive. So that was encouraging that they spent time to actually tell us what to do to make it more attractive to FEMA. So we're following up on that, and we're hoping that we'll get good news from FEMA and we'll have another $20 million in our stormwater fund that we didn't expect to have. So we're hoping that'll come through. That's going to be real exciting. So in the Akoma area, storm sewer improvements. So we've completed the first 2 phases of that. That's the upper area of the South Englewood basin there, kind of between South of Tufts, between I guess roughly Cherokee over east to Sherman over there is kind of the other border there. So we've got the first 2 projects are done. The third phase of that is plans are about 75% complete for the third phase. We're hoping to bid that out here later this year and construct it early next year. So we'll have all of that Akoma area recommendation work done by next summer. So we'll be ready for any rain that comes next summer. We'll have that whole area tightened up and complete for all the improvements that we should be able to handle a 25-year storm in that area when that project's all done. So and then the old Hampden utility improvements. So that project is, we've got the project kind of expanded a little bit there. The initial goal of that project was to replace the storm sewer in Old Hampden between Lincoln and Clarkson. And then we're also going to replace, working with utilities to replace the water and sanitary sewer as well. While we're out there, we're going to go ahead and replace all 3 of the city-owned utilities in that stretch. So we've got the 30% plans are done for the utilities on that right now. The developer, the consultant is working on the 60% plans right now and doing a little more investigation on the existing utilities that are out there and how we're going to fit all 3 of these pipes in there and make it all fit together. So they're coming together. We're hoping by the end of the year to have plans ready for the utility part. But we did find out earlier this week we did get the grant for the complete streets portion of that to do the surface improvements. So we were trying to figure out how we combine that with the utility improvements into one cohesive project where we get utilities done, and by the time it's all done, we'll have the utilities all new and the complete streets concept implemented in that stretch. So it's pretty exciting that we ended up getting that grant for that. That was a big piece of that, to be able to, you know, put the surface infrastructure back to the new configuration that will accommodate bikes and peds a little bit better. So we're just now starting to look at how we tie those 2 projects together, but the utility project remains on track there. We're hoping by early next year to have that ready to bid out and decide how we work that out with the surface improvements. So that's where that one's at. And I think that's all of them I had listed there for what we're working on now for Public Works. Or the main stuff we're working on. That's certainly not everything, but that's our main capital stuff outside of all the maintenance and stuff we do every year. So those are the kind of the highlights anyway. Questions or anything on any of them?
I did have one question. So the study for the Santa Fe corridor, I didn't see listed here. Is that because it's funded through like CDOT or other sources?
Yeah, CDOT's funded that, and it is, they're 99% complete on that. We're just waiting for the final report to come out. And then there's a couple of initial early action things. We're looking at maybe trying to do some, combine the cities together to do some work on a couple of the recommendations that came out of that report. So that's something, yeah, we don't have the final report yet, but when we do, I think some of the stuff is putting the sidewalk underneath the Hampden here, underneath Santa Fe, connecting that sidewalk there. That's a big gap there right now. There's not really a good way to cross under Santa Fe. So there's a couple things like that. They're a little less costly. I think we might be able to do sooner, or I think that sidewalk's going to be more of a CDOT, you know, that's more of a CDOT road there, but there's a few things on that, but it's, a lot of that is multi-jurisdictional stuff. We'll need to work with other cities to fund and kind of connect some things and do some of those recommendations. But the report is, the work is done. They're just finalizing the report, and we should have that pretty soon to kind of see what we can pull out of that. That might be stuff we might want to consider funding as well.
Any other questions for Director Hughes?
You mentioned grant funding, and I know that we have at least one project on here, being the Oxford Pedestrian Bridge that's grant funded. Is that project at risk because we haven't broken ground yet, the grant itself?
So that's an interesting question. We did follow up with the Regional Council of Governments about that, because you would think there would be some kind of time limit. We pushed them on that and said, what happens if we wait a year or two and rebid it? Are you going to take our money away? But apparently the way that money works is as long as we bid it out the first time, that's really their only criteria to show that we are trying to spend the money, but we can't control bid prices and we can't control how much the city can contribute. We've got to go with the budget we have. So actually, there's really no penalty or deadline to rebid it. So we investigated that quite a bit to make sure that we weren't going to lose any of this grant money. We're not in any risk of losing any of it, but it's kind of an interesting situation where there's a deadline to get it out to bid the first time, but if the bid doesn't come in where you need it to be, there's no penalty for waiting a year or two to bid it out again. And I guess there's a few projects that have been delayed like that because we're not the only ones experiencing the economy right now and the way bid prices are. And so we're not in jeopardy of losing any funding right now, which is good news. We have some time to kind of see if the market settles down and see if we can find additional funding sources to be able to make the funding match up. So that was good news. We have checked that and we're in good shape. So
Awesome, thank you.
I just had a brief comment. I think it's cool that you all give some attention to ped and bike access to our city, because I think it makes us really unique in Denver.
Yeah, we try to work with City of Denver as well for a lot of that. Denver's doing a lot of that now, so we're trying to match into what they do. We definitely is the walk and wheel plan is something we try to implement that as we can. And we just got another grant for that South Broadway streetscape that's not listed on here. That was another grant that came through for us. That we're going to be able to put a bike lane on Sherman between Bellevue and 285 all the way up there. That's going to be striped bike lanes and some intersection improvements to make it easier for bikes to get north south through the Broadway corridor there. So that was another exciting project that's coming up that we can make happen there. Those two grants there, we inflated the numbers purposely to make sure we had enough grant funding on those two to fund based on today's market conditions. So we're optimistic that by the time we get those to bid, we should have enough money on those, because those grants are tough. When you get the grant funding and they don't give you any more money, you have to come up with a match, and it makes it tough it's not quite as good as a deal as you originally thought. It's no longer 20%, it's got to contribute 30 or 40. That makes it tough especially on some of those big projects. Those are big numbers you're talking about. So it's like 285 on Broadway. That's our struggle now. That's percentage-wise, it's not huge, but $6 million is a lot of money to make up on a project. So we're going to look for some other funding sources and see what we can do to keep that on track. So.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much.
Fearless AJC, Jeromy is on the line.
Oh, okay.
Mine will
Let's get back over.
go back up. Jeromy, if you're ready, you can go over your projects. Can you see that okay, or do I need to increase the font?
I can see it just fine.
Okay.
So, sorry, everybody. I don't know why I was thinking 5:30 and not 5:15. So sorry about that. So for IT, we have two major projects in our capital. We got the fiber project. Currently, right now, what we're doing is we're writing the RFP to put the RFP on the road to begin construction. And what that does is we've got multiple departments that we're working on this RFP together to kind of get a priority of where we need to go. On an IT side, our priorities is getting to the police department, and then Pirates Cove has some fiber that the fiber that we're using CDOT's fiber, and we're trying to figure out how we can move off of CDOT's fiber there. So those are a couple of priorities. We're planning on putting it on the road and hopefully making a decision and getting that project started early 2023 for those areas. But as funding comes available, we just keep coming down the line, and we're also looking at other opportunities if there's grant opportunities. Unfortunately, some of these fundings that the federal government's releasing, they're really mainly focused on rural areas. They're looking at the underserved or unserved areas. for these funding opportunities. So it's quite hard for us to tap into some of those funding. So we're keeping our eyes open. I'm always keeping an eye out on what the Colorado Broadband Office is doing to look at other funding opportunities on there. And then another project that we've got going on is security cameras. This is kind of ongoing, trying to improve our security. About a year and a half or about a year ago, at the rec center, we did the first floor, and we called that phase one of the funding that we currently had. And then this year, we're currently working on phase two, which is the second floor of the rec center. So we're currently working on the design right now of and what those costs are supposed to be coming back. And then part of that other funding, that 49,000 there is it is a new server that we had to buy, because currently right now our servers are kind of maxed out. We have about 300 security cameras across the city. So we had to get another server to actually support the new cameras that are going to be going in. Does anybody have any questions?
How are we funding fiber in 2023? Didn't council remove fiber from the capital improvement budget?
That is correct. Yes, there is no additional funding for 2023, but currently we have $1 million sitting there in that line item that we haven't used for constructing any fiber.
Okay, so we're carrying.
So
over.
we don't have it. We don't have any additional funding going in. So we're just kind of getting money and then constructing what we can according to the design.
Thank you.
If the fiber budget was increased, would that help you finish some of these fiber to the city asset projects? Or are there other issues, leasing fiber or physically finding the space to put it in that may impact it to a greater level?
It's mainly a funding issue to put it into the ground. When we start thinking about the future, we start looking at future opportunities where there could be some potential revenue. So if we had fiber in the ground, we could potentially lease our fiber to private companies, since we are exempt from SB 152 that allows us to be able to do things of that nature. So if we could have ISPs come in and, because most of the cost, if an ISP wanted to get to the home, we could be the middle mile and provide that fiber backbone for them, at a monthly rate. So, I mean, there's opportunities to do. It's just more of a funding issue. And it's going to take some time because of the costs out there. There's not a whole lot of money to just do that. There also could be some other opportunities of, if we wanted to complete the whole thing, we could look at loans, but, and we could look at loans, or there's other things of partnering with other cities and counties. If they've got projects going on, we can jump onto those projects. So right now I'm kind of working with CDOT as well. There's been, I would say, just passing talk about working with them on some fiber opportunities. So we could probably use some of their fiber, or if they need to construct somewhere, we can go in. So there's lots of opportunities to do stuff like that, but that hasn't come up right yet.
That's interesting. I would think that it could potentially be a revenue source for us, and we have sort of a cheaper opportunity to operate the fiber, that's something we should maybe consider at this committee a little bit more intensely. So thanks for the response.
Any other questions for Director King? Thank you. We appreciate that review.
Thank you.
Director Underhill.
All right, so the Conservation Trust Fund is funded by the Colorado State Lottery. So every time you lose on a scratcher ticket or a lottery ticket, you're actually donating back to your community, which is great. So these funds are funds we've been accruing over the years, and we do roll over year after year if we don't use them. Because we have aging infrastructure, you kind of see a trend here of a lot of fixes that we're having to do at some of our facilities. Some of the aquatics, it's a lot of aquatics elements, like Pirates Cove is 19 plus years old. The rec center, that pool is also aging, and so we're doing some improvements this year. So you can see just over at the rec center at the ERC, we've had to replace the controller over there that keeps our water levels in the pool proper level, which wasn't too expensive, only $3,000 this year, and should be finished by the end of this year or end of this month. We did purchase some new furniture and umbrellas for Pirates Cove to keep the park looking fresh and new. We had to replace at Pirates Cove some of the vacuums to keep the pools clean, and various plumbing repairs. Again, it's almost 20 years old, and so we're seeing some of that age out. That was around $62,000 and should be finished by the end of this year. We did do some major renovations at Pirates Cove with wrapping the play structure. So we didn't replace the play structure. We just wrapped it with new material, and it looks, people coming into the park this year, it was fun to hear. They're like, oh, you got new play equipment. I'm like, yeah, same one you played on last year, but it looks brand new. So that was something Brad Anderson, our aquatics manager, did a lot of research on, and it turned out great. We saved tons of money because that was probably $1 million+ to replace all that play equipment if we started over. So we bought ourselves probably another few years, if not 5 years, maybe more with that. And then we are resurfacing the leisure pool and the lazy river currently. And as they've been digging in literally to resurface it, they've discovered that the tile in the lazy river is completely failing. It's hollow behind. And so we have a change order coming to council on Monday night to put brand new tile around the lazy river versus just replace pieces as we've been doing for years. That's over $100,000 to do that. So everything all said and done by the end of this year for Pirates Cove refurbishing, it's almost $500,000 that we'll be spending, but for a 20-year-old facility, that's not horribly bad. It was telling, we originally, in talking with Brad, I wasn't here when this place was built, but 20 years ago, we went with low bid, and we're paying for it now, literally. With the resurfacing project, they've discovered that the pool was not installed as it should have been. I guess the contractor did residential pools more than large commercial sized pools. And so they cut some corners. We're discovering it now. We are fixing it now, hence some change orders that have come through. Also, lights were installed in the lazy river. We're not open after dusk. We've never turned them on in 20 years, maybe once. And so to avoid some future fails of that lazy river, we are actually removing those, patching them, getting rid of them. Cool concept, but we're not open at night. And then the last one is the Bellevue Train. We put new wheels on the train last Christmas during the Holiday Express. The train actually derailed itself. And that's partially due to temperatures, but the wheels were wearing down and it needed new wheels. So we spent about 10 grand to do some track repairs, put new wheels on. We're literally limping that train along. There's talk, we did receive some funding from the Broncos sale that maybe it's time with this money, we'll never see this type of money again for something like this. We buy a new train for the Bellevue Park project. It brought in quite a bit of revenue this year, more than we projected. I think we had 67,000 riders come through over the summer, which is a lot at $2.50 a piece, adds up quickly. So that little train is actually bringing us some decent revenue as well. So the Broncos money is for youth programs. We serve a lot of youth at the Farm and Train. And so we think that would be ideal funding to use for that. But there's still more conversations to be had of what council would like to see us use the money for and where that can go. But that is one of our top priorities because that train is very loved. Any questions on the Conservation Trust Fund? And again, these are high-level projects. We're doing a lot of other stuff, but this is what we're spending CTF funds on. Okay. The next one is our Open Space Fund. And this is money coming from Arapahoe County Open Space. This last year, the voters. Hopefully y'all voted yes. If you did, thank you very much. Quarter-cent sales tax is forever on that. This year we got $1.1 million from open space funds from all your taxes that you're spending. And so we put that to some of the larger projects. We are finishing Romans Park up this year with we're replacing the asphalt pathway around there, which is, it matches ADA compliance, but a concrete path is much more desirable. And so by the end of this year, we'll have a new finished concrete path that'll go through Romans Park. The last thing to do at Romans now is just irrigation. Everything else has been upgraded. So we're pretty proud of that and happy that park is almost complete. And then Jason Park is the other one, phase 2 of renovations. We are still waiting for a new restroom facility to come in and a new picnic shelter to be coming in. Supply chain issues have held us up all summer long. We just sit and stare at that park and go, okay. But those improvements are $626,000, and we should be finished hopefully by the end of October, but for sure by the end of this year. Any questions on open space? And what's exciting about open space too, and it's not on here because it's a next year project, but Bates Logan, we went after a $500,000 grant for Bates Logan Park to do the picnic shelter, the restroom, ADA parking, some upgrades there. And we did receive that grant. And so we'll be moving forward with those improvements. Next year, we're going out to bid this month. This is where we're staying really busy. So the Public Improvement Funds, we have 3 park renovations going on currently, Cushing, Baker, and Centennial. Baker has been demoed. It has not, the new elements have not been installed yet. Cushing Park, we should be having a ribbon cutting there October 13th. For the new elements, we have a brand new skate park. I was just standing on it today. It's awesome. I'm not a skater and I kind of want to become one now. It's pretty cool. It incorporates all the historical elements of Inglewood. The Cherry Lane trolley is in it. The bridge back here for RTD is also incorporated. The old chicken foot logo is a skatable element in the middle of the park. We got a comment on Facebook about that element and they said it's not skatable. And so American Ramp Company, who's installing it, they're all skateboarders. Like some are pro skateboarders, like X Games guys. They skated it and they said that's skatable. Like, okay, probably not for a beginner or most of us, but it's really cool to incorporate that. The half pipe was being installed today, should be finished by the end of this week. And then we have a brand new fitness court in as well, and that's been installed. So we're kind of waiting to open everything up until the skate park's finished. So again, October 13th, we'll do ribbon cutting at 5:30 if you're all interested in joining us out there. And then Baker is pretty much a full renovation. That park will be done. We'll have new irrigation, new picnic shelter, new restroom, basketball court, ADA, and pathways and a playground will be there. So everything's new at Baker Park, and we're excited to give to that community. It's one of the older parks and a loved park. It's been loved very heavily. And so that one will be done by the end of this year, hopefully. And then Centennial is also another one that we're doing some renovations on the west side of the park. So new playgrounds, picnic shelter, bathroom, and a half-court basketball court, and improved landscaping there too. We just found out too that recently that because of supply chain issues, like we're all hearing about, the playgrounds are delayed maybe until February. That's worst case scenario. They could be in by the end of this year. Our fingers are crossed that's what happens. But yeah, just strange stuff with supply chain. Originally, it should have all been here by August, and even our restrooms that were supposed to have been here 2 weeks ago are delayed another week or two. So just interesting times. That project has had some change orders. It was $2.9 million originally. It's gone up to just over 3 with some safety railings that we want to add on the skate park after we saw some height elevation challenges. And we're working with the American Ramp Company to see if they can help us out, maybe do some of those improvements for us. So it doesn't cost us much more. But yeah, just some random electrical costs, landscaping costs, different things have gone up. Little Dry Creek, they just did their punch list today, and they have probably another week to go on that project to do some different repairs and things that they found today. But that should be done by the end of this month or very early October for phase 1. It looks really great out there. If you haven't been by, take a drive or go walk around that area. It's pretty nice, and that's major channel improvements. They did a large staircase coming down, so individuals that want to go down and enjoy Little Dry Creek Plaza, they can actually get closer to the water elements as the creek is flowing. And then the last one's not that exciting, but parking lot maintenance. We have aging parking lots. This year our bid came in at over $90,000 to do 2 lots, the Farm and Train lot and the Malley lot. And we did not have that much funding to do that. And so we patched a lot of different potholes and some different issues we were having. We've corrected in those lots and striped them as well. And so at least they look kind of new. They're not brand new asphalt, but definitely look better. And the potholes have been fixed. Any questions on those projects?
Just out of curiosity, you said Little Dry Creek project is phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is phase 2 already kind of planned out, or?
We have the construction documents, the plans for what it will look like, but the cost estimates to do everything we'd love to do there were between $4 to $6 million, and we only had about 2. So we'll probably be phasing that out to phase 2, phase 3, possibly a phase 4. The EDDA is also possibly going to be able to contribute some funding, but not until 2024. And so right now it may just be a waiting game to make sure we have the funding to complete the project fully, and with others contributing to that as well. So we'll be looking for some other opportunities for grants, for art, and some of the projects. So it came in much higher than we had hoped, but it looks good if we're able to do all 3 phases.
And would that all be in that area of Little Dry Creek?
Yeah,
okay, so
in the plaza area.
Not like the segment that picks up down by Cushing and connects to the
Correct,
river?
no,
Okay.
they wouldn't touch that.
Any other questions?
On something like parking lot maintenance, are we using internal services to do that? Is that coordinated through Public Works, or are we paying an outside contractor?
It's a contractor that comes in to do that. Public Works is helping out with a project over here in the Cushing Park. There's a parking lot there on Floyd and Cherokee. They are going to be doing some crack sealing there because the neighborhood has received a grant through our neighborhood program to do some art and kind of activate that parking lot so it can be used by the community and not just a vacant lot.
Golf course?
All right, golf course. So we've got a lot going on at the golf course. Currently, we're doing the back 9 irrigation projects. That should be completed by the end of this year. While that doesn't sound very exciting, it's going to greatly improve the turf conditions of the back 9. And so that's an active project. You can still play golf while that project is going on if you're a golfer. But like it says, it was 40 plus years old of irrigation out there. So it's nice to get something new that should last us past our lifetimes, hopefully. Golf carts is something that we purchase year after year, but unfortunately we just can't get them. We put the order in and they said we can't get your golf carts, supply chain issues. So that money will roll over to next year or possibly the year after. Our order is in, but they can't guarantee prices. Prices probably will go up. We're experiencing that everywhere in the city. Facility repairs. So the key walk is something that goes up on top of the roof. It makes it safer for contractors to get up there and clean the fans in the kitchen or work on the AC or whatever it may be. And we've had contractors actually come to the job to do some work on the roof and walk away saying, I'm not getting on that thing. So that key walk is something that we've been struggling to get a contractor for, but I think we've got one locked in. We should get that done by the end of hopefully next year, beginning of next year, we'll get that completed. And then we had a collapse of our grease trap pipes that go out, complete gone. They dug it up and they're like, there's no pipe left here. So they got that fixed. We just got the quote this morning. We thought it was gonna be around 20,000. It came in under 10. We were shocked. It was a major project. So a little bit of savings there for the golf course. And then we needed some new mowers and equipment for maintenance, can't get it either. And so that money will roll over to next year. Hopefully we can get it. Another one where we said, can we lock in prices now and we'll get you a PO cut and everything? And they said, nope, we are not sure what the prices will be next year. So just have to wait and cross your fingers. So, and then the last one, again, we reallocated about $21,000. It typically goes to landscaping, to some other projects to make sure we can complete them this year. So that's where we're at on the golf course. That is an aging building. That whole pro shop clubhouse area, I think we need to do a facelift to make it relevant to, it's kind of starting to fall apart. It's old wood. And so I think that's a future capital project, is either replacement or a complete reface of the clubhouse. Any questions on the golf course?
Last question, I promise. You know, with the steadily worsening water crisis here in the Western United States, is it fair to assume that with the new irrigation projects that you're doing both at the golf course and at the parks, we're also seeing better efficiency?
100%.
Awesome.
Big time.
Right.
Yeah, this new system we're putting in the back nine, it's amazing. It lets you know immediately if you have a leak or a flow that's not projected in the system as you set it up for the irrigation times. So definitely. And the same thing in our parks. Our park system is 30 plus years old, and just we get a lot of leaks and our guys spend a lot of time repairing those.
That's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So on the golf carts, are they all electric carts that were,
Yes.
did we used to have gas powered
We did.
golf carts, and when did we change over completely?
It's probably been 4 to 5 years. They were all electric when I started in 2020, so I'm assuming it happened prior to that, well before.
Okay, so just out of curiosity, is it possible that gasoline carts would be available versus electric carts?
Probably yes. That's a good question. I don't know if we've looked at gasoline in a while, just because of the maintenance costs, the gas costs to do that. Most of our carts we're able to push through as far as they'll last us another couple years, but yeah, we can look into that. I know from a sustainability
I was just
side.
curious.
Yeah.
And then there was another question that, it's about the golf course building. It is built on a landfill.
Right.
So is some of it, not because it's old, but because it's settling, and so that would be major repairs.
That would be major repair. We're not experiencing settling as much as just the outside of the building starting to just fall apart. 'Cause it's wood planks and they've painted it to try to keep it going. From afar, it looks fine, but when you really start looking at it closely, you can see there's some issues popping up.
Thank you.
The golf course was established as an enterprise. So
Correct.
funding something like a building replacement would be a lot easier potentially for the golf course than it would be for another city entity in
Right.
general.
Yeah, and Director Lowe and we've talked with Shannon Bushio over there, who's the golf course manager, about what can we do. There might be some options to look at that could provide additional funding to do something with the clubhouse, because that's not gonna be 100,000, it's gonna be millions to replace or fix.
Does the enterprise still have debt currently?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Director Hill?
Okay, water. We're gonna talk about water, sewer, and South Platte Renew. So this is the set of projects that we're working on this year. A number of these projects are in the initiation and design phase. And so in the initiation and design phase, it takes a lot of time to get projects going. So when you look at the total amount of budgeted and the amount spent, it's because it just takes time to get projects going. But as you can see through here, we have a number of projects that are underway. First and foremost is the raw water supply improvements. That's the city ditch piping project. That's one of our most critical projects to address taste, odor, and hardness, because it changes our supply from Union Ave, the Platte River at Union Avenue pump station, to a direct connection to Chatfield, which the difference in source water quality between those 2 points is pretty significant, and to be able to pull year round from Chatfield should give us a better source water quality and more stability in that source water. So we actually made a selection on the engineer on that one just this past, just 2 weeks ago. And so we'll be bringing that to council here shortly, which will get us in the design phase, and then we'll immediately follow up with selection of we're proposing to execute that project with a CMGC, which is construction manager general contractor approach, as opposed to design bid build. And that'll, getting that contractor as part of that team will follow shortly after the execution of the design contract. What that does is it helps us, we do a number of these projects over at South Avenue. This is actually become the standard way that we execute projects, because it gives us a better opportunity to ensure price certainty and be able to shape the project as it's being designed to ensure that we can actually execute the project that we want to execute. So that's big news. It's finally taken off, and we're excited about that. The next two are linked, and that's flat rate meter conversion and lead service lines. A lot of the reason why we haven't done a lot with flat rate meters yet is because many of those are lead service lines, and so you can't just cut the lead service line and stick a meter pit on it. You have to replace the whole line, and so it naturally becomes part of the lead service line replacement project. The lead service line replacement project, we are in our assessment phase right now. The next step for us on this is we're going to hire a program manager for this. This is such a large program. We don't have the in-house staffing capability to handle it, so we'll be soliciting for a program manager to manage the full execution of that program. We have funding. We've secured right now in the financial plan. We don't have the lead service line replacement funded, as we don't have it fully funded. The way we're closing that gap is we've received the WIFIA loan, which I think many of you have heard about, which is the Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act loan from the EPA. It's a low interest loan. $19 million of that loan will go to lead service lines. And then Sarah has been working with the state revolving fund, and we are targeting $70 million of the infrastructure bill money for the remaining gap on the lead service line program. We estimate right now that program to be somewhere about $80 million. And if right now the only way that program gets done is through these other funding sources. So that's why it's important for us to be on top of targeting that money. That 70 million is actually a split between grant and low interest loan, which says about 52% grant and 80 or 48% low interest loan. So 52% of 70 million is a 36-ish million in grant funding to take care of lead service lines. So that's one of our biggest programmatic projects that we're building revenue for, so that we can actually execute it. Probably takes 7 to 10 years to replace them all. We estimate anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 lead service lines in the city. So it's a big program. As we keep moving down, Hampden Avenue, Tim talked about that. That's our utilities aspect of that. The Ellen treatment plant, we're doing some process improvements. Part of that is the dredging and hauling work that we're doing with the ponds. We're pulling out the solids that have been accumulating for the past 30 years. The rate at which we deposit solids into the pond is faster than the rate at which we pull them out on an annual basis. And so we're going to pull out as much, if not all, of the solids, get it hauled off, reset the full volume of the pond, and then change up the way we operate that to get much more closely to an equal amount in, equal amount out, so that we're not in this situation again. So that project they're mobilizing on October 3rd, actually, so that's underway. Electrical and INC, we have all kinds of electrical update needs at the Allen plant. A lot of it's just outdated. We did take care of the most significantly outdated one, which was our filter panel, which is the one I've told the story where we have to get We had to get parts off of eBay because it was no longer supported. So that's all brand new. It's all updated. It's brand new. It's very important. It's the filters for the water plant. So we've got that one complete. Big Dry Creek conversion, or no, I'm sorry, pump station improvements. That's the 4 main pump stations, which are McClellan, Union Avenue, and then the 2 in the distribution system. We've done a conceptual study on those, and then we're prioritizing those based on what is the appropriate sequencing of those, because in some instances, the distribution system is a higher priority than the raw water system, but the raw water system is equally as important. So we're trying to figure out how to balance both of those when we don't have necessarily funding to do them all at once. We will over time. We're just trying to prioritize the need. Big Dry Creek diversion project. That is the project that never ends. But we think we finally got it figured out. The project had a number of gaps in the design. When we reinitiated the project, we found that there was a significant amount of electrical that wasn't accounted for, and some of the vaults that weren't accounted for. So we've contacted the engineer and have restarted that project. We'll get a new design, and then we'll close that project out completely finally. That will likely be in 2023, early 2024. Annual water line improvements. This is our ongoing program to slowly improve water lines. We actually presented this to council last night. So we have the emergency repair aspect of this, but within there we've plotted all of our line breaks over the last 5 years. And so we have some targeted lines that are high priority that we'll take care of first. We do have a contract out this year, and the main thing that we're working on is looping. So areas where there's a dead end line or there's a line that has low demand, we want to loop that so that the water moves through. It doesn't get stagnant, or we'll put a hydrant on the end of it so that we can flush it more regularly. That improves water quality for people in those localized areas. Communications upgrades, that's our integrations and control. That's all the SCADA and all the systems talking to a computer operated network. Before we did the filter interface panel project, we used to do backwashes with stopwatches. So that's something that most entities stopped doing probably in the 90s, and we were still doing stopwatches. So now we have that as an integrated program in our SCADA system. So we're modernizing across the board as it relates to the water plant. Annual valve replacement. Many of our valves have not been exercised in years, so when we turn them, they break. And so we're systematically going through. We're going to exercise valves. When they break, we'll have a crew come in right after and dig it up and replace the valve. And then our operations complex. We have a number of staff that are working out of 3 different trailers right now, and it's our facility over at the service center is lacking significantly in basically everything. And so we're looking at a modernized utilities complex out at the service center. So those are our active projects. Next slide, and I'm not going to go through details on this, is just our 5-year plan as it relates to the water capital. You can see that there's a number of these projects that are multi-year projects. We program them over multi-year because that's what goes into our financial plans. Those financial plans drive the rates. We ensure that whatever we put in here doesn't necessarily cause some kind of a rate spike. So we're looking at this over the course of actually a 5-year, a 10-year, and a 20-year window. You can see many of the projects that I've already touched on are ongoing projects year over year. The next slide shows you the second half of that, and you can essentially see over the next 5 years, we're targeting $86 million worth of infrastructure improvement. So that's a lot. We have a fledgling engineering group at the utility. 2 years ago, there was no engineering group. Now we have an engineering division. Sarah's actually interim deputy director of that division as well. So she's deputy director of business solutions, but she's also interim director of engineering right now while we look for a deputy director. But we're finding that a number of the biggest of these projects that that needs outside programmatic help is the lead service line replacement. Because so much of that is grant funded, we think it makes sense to work with a program manager and hire that consultant to just manage that from top to bottom, from design all the way through customer interface to construction to completion. So that will be coming to council likely. We'll probably go out for an RFP late this year, early next year. I'd like to have that program manager in place by second quarter next year to really start ramping up. We've also have some regulatory requirements around the lead and copper rules that we have to start to really ramp up and meet. And so we're working with the state as it relates to those requirements. Regulatory pressures on this utility are, they don't get less, they just get more. And so we've had some new regulatory requirements hit us in the last month that will change our approach to some of these programs. And then everybody's heard of PFAS, I assume, the forever chemicals, and the EPA's what they call it, advisory, a notice around PFAS. And so that's all, so we don't even know what that means yet for water providers yet, but it's going to be, whatever it is, we're anticipating significant costs. None of that's programmed here or at South Platte Renew. That's all something we're trying to figure out what the landscape on that is. So that's it for water. We can either stop at water and talk water stuff before I go into sewer, or I can go through all of them. You tell me what you'd like.
Well, since we're on water, any questions?
I have one.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that the federal infrastructure bill that was passed this summer can help in terms of moving some of these projects along, or allow you to do maybe more and get some more things on your list?
That's the 70 million. It's the infrastructure bill. That's exactly what we're going after. It's the infrastructure bill that passed late last year. That's the 70 million for lead service lines. There's a provision in there. I think it was 60 billion nationally that was dedicated specifically to lead service line removal across the country. And so we have a good shot at it. Sarah's the one who's in these meetings, and I think we have a pretty good shot at a lot of that money.
We have an excellent shot at it. So the state has to parse out the money at a certain rate, and so we are right behind Denver Water in our application process.
And that's this bill that passed this summer, right? So there was
It was
another
late last year.
infrastructure bill that passed this summer federally, it's my understanding. It actually got bipartisan support.
Oh, I think that's the second one.
Okay, so I
Yeah,
guess that's my
yeah.
question.
So this is the infrastructure bill that passed late last year. The second one, I think, was the one that was more targeting green industry stuff. That was the second one that passed this summer. We're targeting the first one.
Sure.
I haven't really looked at the second one to see if there's something in there that maybe we should look at.
I think there were some hard infrastructure elements to it as well, but I'm not an expert on that. That's why I was asking.
Sure. Okay. Good question. We'll look into it.
So if we capture this money, the plan is for the utility to pay 100% of the cost to the homeowner for replacement of the lead service line?
That's the policy we have to figure out.
Okay.
That's part of what that's part of the policy recommendation that we're working through to bring to council. So if we get a significant amount of grant money, then I think it could make sense. Part of the challenge is the loan money, the way the loan money is structured, you can't spend it on private infrastructure, you can only spend it on public infrastructure. So there might be some recommendations as to where we delineate private versus public. So there are some things to be worked out from a policy perspective on that. But the goal would be, with all this money, is to create as little of a burden on a homeowner who's not expecting to pay an $8,000 bill that they're not budgeting for, to remove the lead service line between the meter and their house. So ultimately, that's homeowner responsibility, and then pit to the street
Right.
is city responsibility. Our goal is to minimize that cost to the homeowner as much as possible. We anticipate that each one, we're actually doing a pilot right now to replace, we have 7 or 8 lead service lines that are flat rates that want to convert to a meter. And so what we're doing is we're using those 7 or 8 and getting a full delineation of cost from house to street so that we can actually take that information and then scale it up to what that looks like, you know, from a citywide programmatic perspective.
Awesome.
So
Sounds like
if
a
it's,
good approach.
yeah, so we will know segment by segment, and then we can take that information from real data and then start to really understand that.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for water? Okay, move on to sewer.
Okay, sewer's a lot more straightforward. So we do a couple things. We do CIPP, which is lining of the sewers. So the sewer is typically a clay pipe, and there's this resin material that you can put in the inside of it, and it lines it, and it basically creates a new pipe without digging up the street. It's a slick technology, works great. We have our first contract underway. It's about to start, I believe, in the next week or two for our first segment of lining. The approach on that would be every year just to line a certain part of the system. So the second piece of this is we have CCTV, which we're doing a baseline camera visual inspection of every pipe in the city that's managed by the utilities department. And that will allow us to prioritize where the CIPP goes. So we'll want to put that in places where the pipes are damaged. Clay pipe, if it's undisturbed and it sits there, is a great infrastructure element. But the problem is it's easily disturbed. So roots will get into it, or it'll be crushed or something like that. So that CCTV will help us prioritize that. And then the third one on here is the Englewood's 50% share of the improvements to South Platte Renew. And then 5-year, similar thing, programmatic work. It's CIPP pipelining. It's also manhole rehab, same thing. We also have money in there for the Hampden Ave project, which Tim talked about. And then ultimately you can see the big expense is half of the SPR capital. So 35A, the SPR's 5-year capital is just over 70 million. It's just right around 72 million. And then the next slide is what we've got going in SPR from a capital perspective, current projects. Our most significant of which is our ChemP UV project. That is our project that's required for us to meet a compliance deadline in June of 2023 to be able to treat phosphorus levels to the new requirements based on Regulation 85, which is a nutrient regulation. We are on track to be ahead of that deadline, which is good, and have that system online. We're in startup and commissioning right now, and it's we're almost to the point where we're going to have substantial completion on that. So we should be well ahead of that deadline. You see some of the other projects are generally system upgrades over time, just investing in things. One of the Headworks is one that's I think that's on the Headworks one is Headworks is probably the hardest, roughest part of the system as it relates on equipment and things like that. It's really where the raw sewage comes in, and it's tough on equipment. Our O&M complex is an expansion and updating of our control center, our maintenance shops, as well as above those maintenance shops and control center, we're going to add some meeting space and administrative staff area. And then the remainder of the building is circa about 1986. So we're going to be doing some upgrades to that. We also have a lot of HVAC upgrades that are necessary. The HVAC and those buildings are in pretty rough shape. And then you can see it's just some of the other ones are just more process improvements that we have scheduled. That is it for South Platte Renew and the sewer fund.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
I just had a quick comment. I went to the South Platte Renew event. I know some other people were here. I know for sure. I saw Steve. It was pretty cool. Thank you all for doing that.
Is that the open house?
It was.
Yeah, great.
It's pretty recent.
Yeah.
And I certainly learned a lot, and it looks like you all have done a good job at putting in some things that make sense. And I thought the gas recouping, or whatever you might call it, was pretty unique to be able to sell back to Excel.
Yep. The
I thought that
biogas.
was a neat project among some other things. So.
Yeah, we're at, I think our revenue right now is at 5.2 million. Total cost was 7.8, and our projected payoff after all expenses is, I believe it's January of 2024.
Wow.
So
Pretty quick.
post January of 2024, it'll be generating positive revenue. So it's been really, and plus it's diverted a lot of, we're not flaring. So if you've seen anything about the Front Range and Denver Metro air quality, I think we just got downgraded a few weeks ago to some of the worst air quality. So this is our little step in improving that.
That's great.
But thank you, thanks for coming.
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah, we're very excited.
Any other questions? Thank you, Director Van Rice.
Thank you.
Thank you, directors. You are willing to stay to listen to the budget overview, or you could enjoy your evening.
Or with the late hour, do we want to move this to next?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Yeah.
propose is a time check, because on 25th, I think it was, actually, I think Director Underhill, you're back.
Yeah.
So my guess is we probably have some time then.
We would have time, yeah.
Would folks prefer that? Get the time back tonight?
If we have time at the next meeting.
Yeah,
I think that makes
I
sense.
think we will, yeah. And Josh will be here,
Yeah,
so that'll be good.
that's a really good point.
Okay, so we can move that, we'll just push that to next month's meeting. And then I think that the last, other than a member's choice, thank you, Jenny, for putting together the schedule.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for the directors being accommodating, so.
Yes, and thank all of you for supporting us for another year. Looking forward to it. And the SIP information is helpful. It created a lot of discussion. We may even move to having a dedicated meeting amongst us for it. So if you wonder if they're taking the time, it definitely added a lot of value last year. So yeah, we're scheduled out through June. Looks like October through June. So we'll be back in the same, making the presentation for council. Members' choice. Anybody have anything? All right.
I just have one question. We're looking for next year in terms of our joint session with City Council and capital discussion. There's been a question posed whether various boards and commissions and committees would like to send a representative to that meeting rather than everybody attend that meeting. So this is something to think about. We can have an answer for next month. But whether you would prefer to have one representative attend that joint session with City Council and then report back to the committee, or if you would prefer as a group to attend, or as many to attend that meeting. So that's just something to think about, and we can discuss that next month.
Sounds good. Thanks for the heads up.
All right. That won't happen until the April-May time frame. So.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? All right.
Just clarification, I know, I think last meeting I brought up the question about whether, and I think it's scheduled for November when we look at the downtown redevelopment or the city center redevelopment project, but the prospect of perhaps inviting a member of the downtown redevelopment commission, is it? Because I think it'd be very helpful to hear some context about kind of the citizen input and process, as well as the director's perspective. Again, voluntarily. I know we haven't done that traditionally. And I know I can certainly go to one of their meetings and peek in as well, but I just find that, I think, potentially helpful for context.
I like the idea.
Let's do it.
Jenny, is that something you want me to do or do you want to do?
I can double check with Director Power. to make
Okay.
Sure that's
It's
scheduled.
okay with them. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
We're not breaking any charter rules or anything, are we, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I mean, this is just information gathering, and, you know, might as well get as much information as we can.
Excellent suggestion. That's a great idea. Great. Anything else? All right, then I think we're adjourned for today. Thank you, everybody. Thanks again, directors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, appreciate it.
Well, there is.
She got a few stuff. Thank you.
Okay.
Water,
Okay.
I say, I gotta tell you.
Yeah.
I did this.
Can I also remember us?
And,